So it was grandfather who orchestrated everything I murmured, more to myself than to him. He allowed father to pay for secrets he couldn't keep, and now we're all his victims. The admission hung heavy in the charged air, a mixture of sorrow and the slow dawning of understanding. I still remember the phone call that shattered the quiet of my early morning. I had barely taken a sip of bitter coffee when an unfamiliar number flashed on my screen. The voice on the other end, flat, emotionless, delivered news that felt unreal. My father was dead. They said it was a mere accident, a twist of fate on a rain-soaked highway. But as the words sank in, a numbness took hold, opening a void where memories of his gentle laugh and the warmth of his guidance once lived. I couldn't believe that such a gentle soul could vanish in an instant, dismissed as nothing more than a tragic mishap. Deep down, I knew there was more to this story, a truth hidden behind sterile police reports and cold statistics. That day, I found myself driving through the city in a haze of grief that blurred the neon lights and passing strangers. Every corner of my mind screamed that something was off, as if the universe had conspired to hide the real story behind layers of family secrets. I recalled how my father's eyes sparkled with quiet determination whenever he hinted at a mystery that he could never fully resolve. His sudden absence left me with more questions than answers. Determined to honor his memory, I made a silent vow I would uncover the truth, even if it meant venturing into the darkest corners of our family's past. Returning to the empty apartment that once resonated with my father's steady presence, I began sifting through his personal effects. Dust motes danced in the dim light filtering through drawn curtains, and every creak in the floorboards echoed with memories of his soft footsteps. It was there, in a weathered drawer, hidden beneath a stack of old photographs and worn books, that I stumbled across a bundle of letters. Their fragile pages smelled of age and secrets, and each word penned by his hand felt like a whisper from the past. As I read, my heart pounded furiously against my ribs, each sentence carrying hints of betrayal and hidden truths, a tapestry of pain and deception woven through generations. I learned through his letters that the accident was not as random as it appeared. My father had long suspected that forces from within our own family might be at play. His words were filled with heartfelt confessions of warnings he had ignored and clues he had carefully recorded. With each letter, the dark legacy of our lineage unfurled. There were coded references to clandestine meetings in fog-shrouded docks and to whispered conversations that took place under the weight of unspoken threats. I felt as if I were peeling back layers of a painful history, each layer revealing a scar he had carried with him all these years. The deeper I delved into my father's hidden diary, the greater my resolve grew. I recalled moments from my childhood, a glimpse of his secretive smile, the way he would abruptly change the subject when I inquired about distant relatives, and I realized that these were not mere coincidences, but carefully concealed pieces of a puzzle. The documents hinted at an alliance, formed not out of love, but born of necessity, betrayals committed in the name of family honor. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone close had manipulated fate to silence him, and that I was now standing at the precipice of a conspiracy that reached further than I had ever imagined. In the midst of my grief, I reached out to Isabelle Dubois, my closest and most reliable friend. Isabelle was a beacon of rationality and fierce loyalty, a brilliant lawyer whose resolve was as unyielding as mine. I visited her cramped office where the scent of old books and fresh ink mingled in the air. As she listened to my trembling recitation of my father's letters, her sharp eyes softened with empathy and a glimmer of anger. "Clara," she said quietly, "if there's even a shred of truth hidden in these words, we will unearth it together." Her unwavering support fortified my spirit, even as doubts continued to gnaw at the very core of my being. Night after sleepless night, I pored over my father's records, reconstructing a narrative that spanned decades of family history. My mind was consumed by questions: who among us harbored such bitterness and treachery? Was my father's death truly an accident, Or was it a meticulously staged finale to a long-hidden vendetta? Every whispered clue in those yellowed pages led me on a labyrinthine journey that threatened to swallow me whole. In the quiet hours before dawn, I scribbled notes feverishly connecting names and dates like constellations in a starless sky. I felt like a detective in a noir film desperate to piece together the mosaic of our shattered family history. The more I uncovered, the more I recognized wounds that went far beyond an unexplained death. The letters hinted at a deep-seated betrayal within our family, a betrayal that had festering roots stretching back generations. It wasn't just my father's demise that had been cloaked in mystery, but the very honor of our bloodline that was stained by secrets and lies. Every revelation was a dagger to my heart, mixing sorrow with a burning desire for retribution. I could feel the cold pangs of impending revenge building within me, tempered only by the memory of his loving guidance and the hope for absolution. As I sat amidst the relics of a bygone era, the soft patter of rain on the windowpane became a morose symphony accompanying my silent crusade. The storm outside seemed to mirror the turmoil within. Even as I clutched the letters close to my heart, I was acutely aware that the treacherous hands which might have orchestrated my father's demise could be hidden in plain sight. I began to suspect that the key to unlocking this mystery lay not only in deciphering his coded messages, but also in confronting the very people I had once trusted as family. Every so often, I caught a familiar but distant reflection in the mirror, a woman whose eyes were as deep and enigmatic as her lost past. I wondered if in my relentless pursuit of truth, I was becoming what I despised, a vessel of hatred fueled by sorrow and vengeance. Yet the memory of my father's unwavering kindness and the countless sacrifices he made for me gave me the strength to brave the uncertain path ahead. I knew that uncovering these secrets might shatter everything, yet I had to do it. The alternative, living in the shadow of unanswered questions, was far more unbearable. In the midst of my investigation, I also received unexpected visits from Detective Jean-Pierre, a middle-aged man with a demeanor as unyielding as stone. He carried the weight of his own silenced truths. Our conversations were sparse but laden with unspoken understanding. He hinted that the official narrative wasn't as ironclad as it appeared and urged me to keep digging. His presence was both a comfort and a source of concern. I wondered what personal battles he was fighting behind his stoic exterior. Every revelation, every new piece of circumstantial evidence added sparks to the smoldering coals of my anger and doubt. I found myself oscillating between grief and determination, between the need for revenge and the desperate hope for a semblance of truth. My father's ghost seemed to whisper from every corner of the apartment, urging me onward. Do not rest until our story is told, until justice is served. And so, with the cautious determination that had become my only solace, I pressed on. That first chapter of my journey was a mixture of heartbreak and resolute purpose. The mysterious letters, the cryptic hints within them, and the overwhelming suspicion that family, with all its layers of love and betrayal, had sealed my father's fate, set the stage for a pursuit that promised no simple answers. I knew that every secret uncovered would lead to more questions. Yet beneath the tumult of emotions, one burning truth emerged: the need to unmask the hidden enemy and confront the legacy of betrayal that had defined our lives for far too long. I close this part of my journey with a promise to myself and to the memory of my father that I will leave no stone unturned. The secrets of my family are dark and winding, but I'm ready to plunge into that abyss, for only then can I hope to find the light of truth, however faint it may be. And as the rain continued its mournful drumming against my window that night, I embraced the uncertainty, determined to turn sorrow into strength, doubt into a relentless drive for justice. There is an echo in every crevice of my heart now, a ghostly murmur of secrets waiting to be challenged. I have taken the first step on this perilous path, armed with nothing but my father's final words and the burning need to see justice done. Though the road ahead is shrouded in darkness and betrayal, I secretly feel that this is just the beginning of a story that will change everything. I promise myself that I will meet every twist of fate head-on for the truth, no matter how painful, is the only salve that can heal these deep, festering wounds. And so, with trembling hands and a soul afire with vengeance and hope, I step forward into the night, ready to unravel the labyrinth of our family's secrets. I remember the chill of early morning when I finally decided to confront the one person I'd both loved and feared, my grandfather, Antoine Moreau. With my father's letters tucked close in my coat pocket and the weight of generations' secrets upon my shoulders, I drove to his mansion, a sprawling estate that from the outside looked like a relic of a bygone era, both grand and intimidating. Every mile brought a swirl of conflicting emotions, determination intertwined with dread, hope shadowed by the bitter taste of betrayal. When I arrived, the mansion's imposing facade loomed against a slate-gray sky, its arched windows reflecting a history written in silence. I hesitated at the heavy oak door, pausing for a moment to steel my resolve. Memories of my father, his gentle smile, his secretive glances, and the half-whispers of truth he left behind in every word flooded my mind. Stepping inside felt like stepping into a crypt of memories and unspoken sins. The air was dense with the scent of old paper and mystery, an atmosphere that promised both revelations and heartache. Inside, I was greeted by an austere butler whose expression betrayed nothing. I was led through a labyrinth of dark corridors, adorned with ancestral portraits, whose eyes seemed to follow my every step. In the mansion's grand sitting room, lavishly decorated yet curiously void of warmth, I found Antoine waiting. He moved with an air of calculated composure, his every gesture measured, as if choreographed. I wasted no time. "Grandfather," I began, my voice steady, despite the tide of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. "I need answers about my father, his death. These letters point to secrets our family has long tried to bury. I believe you hold some of that truth." His deep-set eyes hardened for just a fraction, and his voice, low and deliberate, replied, "Clara, some truths are better kept hidden. Your father chose his path, and perhaps it was wiser if you follow yours without stepping into our past. His refusal was not just denial, it was a wall built to keep the dark history locked away. Every word he spoke dripped with the weight of unspoken guilt and concealed sorrow. I pressed on desperate to find even a fragment of truth, but he remained as impenetrable as the mansion's stone walls. Frustration gnawed at me like a persistent ache. The answers I sought were not in his polite dismissals, but in the cryptic hints he carefully avoided. I left his presence feeling more isolated than ever, the mansion's silence echoing the cold dismissal I had received. With every step out of that grand hall, I vowed that his evasion would only propel me further into this dangerous rabbit hole of family secrets. That very afternoon, I met with Isabelle Dubois at her modest, book-lined office. Isabelle, always the pragmatic ally, had been my emotional anchor since the day my father died. As I recounted the encounter with Antoine, she listened with a furrowed brow and a quiet intensity that made me feel understood. "Clara," she said firmly, "there's a pattern here, a legacy of them hiding truths to protect their own. Your father's letters are the breadcrumbs. We need to follow them no matter how unpleasant the journey might be." Her words brought a small measure of comfort amidst the storm of my thoughts. Together, we spread out the letters on her desk, piecing together dates, names, and phrases that pulsed with latent meaning. Isabelle's legal expertise illuminated links I had barely grasped, references to old contracts, secret meetings, and a long-standing feud that seemed to have festered over decades. One line in particular caught my eye: "The ghost of betrayal haunts those who dare to seek the truth." It was as if my father had known that the past would rise to reclaim us. Later that evening, Detective Jean-Pierre paid me a visit at a small, dimly lit cafe. His presence, as ever, was heavy with his own unspoken burdens. Over coffee that had long gone cold, he spread out a collection of old police reports and news clippings. "There have been other accidents in the family's history," he confided in a low, measured tone. "Deaths that were brushed off as misfortune, yet they all share similar anomalies, a pattern too deliberate to be mere chance." His eyes' reflective pools of sorrow and determination met mine as he added, "The powerful are adept at silencing inconvenient truths, Clara. Your father's demise might just be the tip of a much larger iceberg." Equipped with Isabelle's insights and Jean-Pierre's evidence, I returned to the mansion later that night. The corridors, once a mere physical space, now transformed into a living record of every hidden emotion my family had harbored. I felt compelled to search for more clues, anything that might break through our carefully constructed fortress of silence. Drawn by a memory sparked by one of my father's cryptic hints, I made my way to the study, a room steeped in the antique scent of leather and old parchment. In a secluded corner of that room, behind a faded portrait of an unknown ancestor, I discovered a hidden compartment. My pulse quickened as I carefully coaxed the mechanism open. Inside, wrapped in yellowed cloth, were documents and a small leather-bound diary. The air around me grew heavy with anticipation as I started reading the diary, its pages, a candid testament to betrayals, forbidden love, and desperate attempts to keep explosive truths under wraps. There were references to clandestine meetings, whispered conspiracies during midnight rendezvous, and a recurring mention of the final reckoning. I sensed that my father's pursuit of justice had been thwarted by forces far more complex and deeply rooted than I had imagined. A late-night call from Isabelle broke my concentration. From her archival research, she'd unearthed records from the university's history department, linking our family name to a scandal that spanned decades. The records detailed secret alliances fostered in hushed rooms affairs that had the power to topple reputations' fortunes built on deception, and a feud that had nearly torn our family apart long before I was born. As I listened to her excited whisperings, I couldn't shake the overwhelming realization our family's dark legacy was not an aberration. It was woven into the very fabric of our existence. With every piece of evidence, every faded letter and cryptic memo, my world spun a little faster. I began to see the connections like scars on an old weathered skin. Each clue pointed towards an intricate dance of power and betrayal of secrets, guarded not to protect the innocent but to shield the guilty. The more I uncovered, the more I questioned my own certainty. Was my father's death a tragic accident spun by fate? Or was it a calculated act designed to preserve a legacy of corruption and deceit? The revelation that there were recurring motifs, a repeated phrase here, a similar code reference there, started to hint at something even more sinister. It was as if my father had tried to warn me that the enemy was not a single isolated face, but a collective shadow, a network of deceit that had infiltrated every corner of our family. That notion forced me to face an uncomfortable possibility. The one person I believed to be solely responsible might have been but a pawn, a scapegoat in a grander scheme orchestrated by those who truly wielded power behind the scenes. In a quiet, secluded cafe down a rain-soaked street, best friends Isabelle, Detective Jean-Pierre, and I regrouped to piece together our findings. We laid out documents, photographs, and handwritten notes forming an uneasy alliance against an enemy that wasn't just an individual, but an entire legacy of betrayal. Jean-Pierre traced timelines between mysterious accidents and noted peculiar overlaps in dates and locations. Isabelle connected legal documents that hinted at hidden financial interests linked to our family fortunes, and I, with my father's final words echoing in my mind, recorded every detail with a growing sense of purpose. That night, as I sat by a fogged window in the cafe, the storm outside mirrored the tempest within me. My heart pounded with equal parts fear and determination. The journey to uncover our history had taken me deep into a labyrinth of secrets, each turn revealing more complexity than I had ever imagined. Was I prepared to endure the truth no matter how bitter it might be? Every revelation forced me to confront not only the fallibility of those I had once idolized, but also the uncomfortable possibility that the real monsters were hiding in familiar faces. I left the cafe with a notebook full of scribbled connections, and my resolve crystallized into an unyielding vow I would follow every lead, face every dark corner of our past, and unmask the entire conspiracy. The mansion, Isabelle's research, and Jean-Pierre's cold evidence all pointed to one undeniable fact. Our family's tragic history was not random misfortune, but a tapestry of deliberate acts meticulously woven over generations. As I walked home through the rain, each droplet on my face felt like a baptism washing away old doubts and igniting a fierce commitment to the truth. I would return to the mansion's shadows, dive deeper into the secrets that had long festered there, and no matter the cost, expose the legacy of lies that had dictated my family's fate. The night was silent except for the rain and the distant rumbles of thunder, a solemn promise that the reckoning was near, and I was the instrument through which it would be revealed. In that moment, I realized that tracing the past was not merely an act of revenge. It was a pilgrimage toward reclaiming the truth and ultimately the redemption of a family lost to its own sins. I tightened my grip on my father's letters and stepped forward into the darkness, resolved to uncover every secret left behind. I never imagined that the day would come when I would have to confront the face I had come to despise, the very person I had believed responsible for the misery that had plagued our family for so long. Yet here I was standing in the dimly lit corridor of the old family estate, heart pounding in my chest. The secrets I had uncovered and the bitter truths I had digested all led to this moment, and I knew with unsettling clarity that the enemy I had imagined was not who I thought. That night, as the wind howled through the cracks in the aged stone walls and rain battered the window panes with relentless fury, I found myself summoned to the secluded study. I had received an anonymous note promising revelations that could shatter the last of the illusions I clung to. With trembling hands, I unfolded the paper. In a spidery script, it read, "Meet me where our father once whispered hopes to the night he waits within our shared bloodline." My pulse quickened. I suspected that this messenger might be none other than the person I had long reviled, the one I blamed for every injustice. I entered the study where shadows danced in the flickering candlelight. A solitary figure stood by the window facing the storm outside. At first, my eyes narrowed in anger, expecting to see the cold, calculating gaze of a man who had betrayed our father and our family. Instead, I encountered the gentle sorrow in the eyes of a man I had never truly known, a man whose features bore a striking resemblance to my father's own. His dark hair, his hesitant posture, even the way his hand trembled as he reached out, all spoke of a vulnerability that I had never expected to see in someone I thought was cold and heartless. "Clara," he began softly when I finally managed to speak, his voice carrying a blend of regret and determination. "I know you despise me. I've known for far too long that you hold me responsible for the tragedies that have shadowed us. But believe me when I say I fought all my life, not out of malice, but under the crushing weight of secrets I never asked for." I backed away as if his words were a physical blow. "Responsible? How can you stand there and claim innocence when everything points to you?" I demanded, voice cracking between fury and disbelief. He paused, eyes glistening as he shifted his gaze downward. "I am your half-brother, Clara. I never knew my place in your life until after our father's death, when our grandfather Antoine revealed my existence as a means to bind us all under a single dark legacy. I was raised in the shadows of his ambitions, and like you, I suffered in silence. I was used as a pawn, manipulated by the man we both once revered." The revelation hit me like a torrent. I had always believed that the enemy was an external force, a mysterious saboteur who had infiltrated our family. Instead, I was staring at someone who, despite his own heartache, shared a common bond with me that I had never anticipated. The very person I had resented with every fiber of my being was, in fact, my flesh and blood, a part of my family's wounded soul. My mind raced back to the fragments of conversation with Isabel and the eerily coded references in my father's letters. Slowly, the pieces began to align, and the monstrous image of betrayal I had conceived dissolved into a painful ambiguity. "It wasn't me who caused Father's death," he continued, voice barely a whisper, as if he were confessing an unforgivable sin. "It was Grandfather. He orchestrated events that led to that fatal accident, the one he tried so desperately to cover up. When Father discovered too much about the dark deals and the dangerous alliances he had fostered, Grandfather's panic set off a chain of events culminating in that tragic night. His words were laced with remorse and an almost desperate need to make amends. Anger surged within me now, not just at the man before me, but at the legacy of cruelty that had defined our family. All my life I had clung to a raging desire for revenge, a fire that promised to purge the stains of betrayal. Yet faced with the raw vulnerability of my half-brother, I felt the weight of my own bitterness. I remembered the days when Father's gentle guidance and quiet dignity had been my only solace, the moments when his eyes shone with love and unwavering kindness. His memory urged me to look deeper. "I was nothing more than a puppet, Clara," he pleaded, stepping closer. "Our grandfather controlled us both. He used you as the instrument of his revenge and me as the scapegoat. I've suffered invisibly, battling under the burden of guilt for crimes I did not commit." His eyes searched mine, battered by remorse and the desperate hope for absolution. "I never wanted to betray you, but I was forced into a role that I now regret every day." The storm outside raged louder, a fitting chorus to the tumult of emotions inside me. I felt my heart harden for a moment, a brief instinct urging me to extinguish this newfound compassion with the ice of disdain. Yet as I looked into his soul, I began to see the truth in his words, a truth my father's hidden diary had hinted at, but that the pain of loss had blinded me to. The dark legacy of our grandfather loomed over us both, a malignant force that had twisted our lives. I realized then that my thirst for revenge was misplaced. It had consumed me and obscured the very justice I sought for those who had suffered. A long silence stretched between us before I spoke, my voice raw and laden with the revelations of my shattered beliefs. "So it was Grandfather who orchestrated everything," I murmured, more to myself than to him. "He allowed Father to pay for secrets he couldn't keep, and now we're all his victims." The admission hung heavy in the charged air, a mixture of sorrow and the slow dawning of understanding. "We can still stop him," my half-brother said, steeling himself. "I have access to documents and ledgers, evidence of every dark transaction and every hidden truth that he tried so hard to bury." I felt hope and trepidation intermingling at the notion of joining forces with someone I had once vowed to hate. Yet the clarity of our situation left little room for further animosity. If the true enemy was Grandfather Antoine, then our mutual indifference towards him had blinded us long enough. Night after night, with Isabelle's meticulous research and Detective Jean-Pierre's relentless investigation supporting our efforts, we began to unravel the final strands of Antoine's vast web of deceit. I remember the painstaking hours spent combing through old bank statements, sealed letters, and lost journals. Slowly, the irrefutable evidence of his manipulation and greed came into focus. Every piece we uncovered was a nail in the coffin of the opulent facade he had constructed, a legacy of corruption that had poisoned our family's history. Then came the ultimate confrontation. The storm had finally settled, lending a surreal calm to the dawn as we arranged a meeting with Antoine, this time with the truth firmly in our grasp. In the grand parlor of the mansion, with the air thick with centuries of secrets and bitter regret, we faced him together. His eyes, once so fiercely guarded, betrayed hints of panic and indignation as we laid out the evidence. "You manipulated everything to serve your own ambitions," I said, voice steady as I recounted the proof of his crimes. Father's death. These endless tragedies all orchestrated to protect your power and legacy. Antoine's silence was more damning than any word he could have offered. My half-brother stood by my side, no longer the enemy of my past, but a partner in the pursuit of justice. There in that charged room, I made a choice that would define my future. I could have allowed the fury of revenge to consume me entirely, driving me to become as heartless as the man we now exposed. Instead, I chose forgiveness, not for the sake of weakness, but as a path to liberate myself from the cycle of hatred. "I forgive you," I whispered, not only to my brother, but to the ghost of my father, whose principles still guided me. In that moment, the heavy burden of resentment began to lift, replaced slowly by the cautious hope of healing and unity. Together we turned over every stone until the full extent of grandfather's misdeeds was brought to light. The authorities, once skeptical of the scattered pieces of evidence, now had an undeniable case against him. As the law closed in on the man who had manipulated us for so long, I felt for the first time in years a tender wave of relief. Justice, long delayed, was finally being served. Standing by the window of our once haunted mansion, where the rain had washed away so many of our sins, I felt the promise of a new dawn. My father's memory, once shrouded in mystery and loss, now guided us toward a future where love and honesty held more power than bitterness ever could. And as the morning light broke through the fading darkness, a quiet certainty settled within me. The truth, no matter how painful, would always be our salvation.